All right, everybody, welcome back to the next edition of the Mark It Down for a Cup of Joe podcast. I'm Mark.
And I'm Joe.
And Joseph, we're coming off really something fresh in our minds, something insane that happened that's no doubt all over Twitter, even minutes after it happened. The end of that Browns Steelers game, the big fight that happened.
Oh, you want to talk about saucy and spicy, Mark? Boy, that was some sriracha sauce that we saw out there tonight. Towards the end of that game.
That was brutal. I like you were kind of saying, I had never seen anything quite like that.
For maybe before we dive into this, Mark, maybe we should let our listeners kind of know what's going on if they haven't heard what's going on, what we're referencing.
Good point.
And then again, we apologize for that, listeners. This is just so fresh in our minds, and it's just took us all for a surprise.
We have to, it's one of those things you just jump to.
Yeah, exactly. Because I in all my football, I've never seen anything like this. Basically, what happened for all you listeners out there, in the last few seconds of the game between the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Cleveland Browns, things got a little testy between these two players, especially between these two teams, especially between Myles Garrett and Mason Rudolph. And on a late, I think it was a third down play. I think Mason Rudolph, he got rid of the ball, but he was kind of dragged to the ground a little bit, and he didn't like that. So him and Myles Garrett started to go back and forth for a little bit until Myles Garrett ripped Mason's helmet off and clubbed him with it. I mean, it was completely uncalled for in my mind, Mark. That's just not cool. I mean, that's a big 270-pound man swinging a, football helmets are big and heavy. I mean, he could have done some real damage right there, potentially killed Mason Rudolph.
Yeah, but Joseph, what was my comment about that whole thing after it?
Was it that was some, do I dare say it, Mark? You're black on white, right?
No, not that,
Okay,
not that.
Okay, not that one. Okay.
No, that was
We'll save that for the racial injustice podcast.
That will never come. Let's just say this is the interesting thing because that brown, the wood, the bark of the dog pound, I guess you could say. So I'm rolling in all these puns over here. Kind of got a little testy and hit some steel over the head with, this hard plastic with a hard hat almost. So, as crazy as that is. But no, my comment referring to Mason Rudolph. I mean, dude, this guy's been through the ringer this year. Like, first getting basically murdered by Earl Thomas on the field, and, people may have thought that might have been attempted murder on the field. Well, guess what? It happens merely weeks later by Myles Garrett with his own freaking helmet. Just hit him straight in the head. And, it's just something that you're not prepared for. And, I know it was a gritty game, AFC North. Slugfest, obviously.
Excuse my video game reference, Mark, but this just kind of reminds me of those Call of Duty games, where you pick up someone's weapon and you go get them with it, and you have that little achievement that pops up, and you get like 100 XP points. Myles Garrett.
Yes.
Probably wasn't the right thing to do, but you got yourself, figuratively in this sense, that Call of Duty badge.
Going further with that Call of Duty reference, Myles Garrett over here was on a kill streak, and unfortunately, that care package that was dropped for Myles Garrett, it contained a UAV, and it looks like the NFL is going to steal that UAV because they're going to have him on lockdown, know exactly where he is at all times, what he's doing, because there's probably a suspension looming for an act like that. What do you think?
Oh, yes. I think it's going to be a fairly hefty suspension. I don't think this is going to be something where he gets off with a 2-game suspension. I'm thinking at least a 4-game suspension. And, that's just kind of my opinion. I've never seen anything like that, so I have nothing to gauge this off. But I'm feeling right around 4, if not even more.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, it's like one of those things kind of when the NFL doesn't see something it hasn't seen before. It seems like Roger Goodell just really goes, ban hammer happy, I guess, where he likes to suspend for longer periods of time, and then if an appeal happens, it'll get reduced. But I mean, like, honestly,
Yeah.
like, that might have been attempted murder. Like, that's how bad it looked, with that
Yes.
heavy of an object.
Mark, I have a theory about this. Could Myles Garrett just still be a little salty over that fan that punched him in the face?
Oh, wow! So you're
Mark,
saying it's coming full
may
circle,
I
maybe?
even go as far to suggest that fan, that quote unquote fan who punched Myles Garrett in the face, may I be so bold to say that fan may have been Mason Rudolph?
Whoa, Mason Rudolph in like a Browns jersey, like a Baker Mayfield jersey in disguise or something.
Flies all
just
the way out to Cleveland just to punch him in the face, and then maybe this is a game Myles Garrett had circled on his calendar. Revenge game.
Right at the end of the
You punch
game.
me in the face, I hit you in the head with the helmet.
Well, I mean, right at the end of the game when the state of the game was already it was already decided. I mean, and maybe he felt like it was his opportunity. But let's save that for the NFL Attempted Murder Conspiracies podcast. But yeah, let's move on with that. So just some housekeeping from last week. If for all of those who have followed and listened to our podcast, let's just say we proverbially really crapped ourselves with our picks. I will say it was a brutal week for picks. Both of us, as you know, we picked the same games out of the 13 games. We got 4 right, 9 wrong, which puts my overall record to 78 and 51. And then you are 6 games back. So you would be 72 and 56, I believe.
I believe it's 7 games, so I'd be 71 and 57.
Okay, so even more drastic. But Joseph, how do you feel after last week's pick'ems? I mean, we were so confident too. I thought this was going to be almost a flawless week for us after that Thursday night pick of the Raiders, and it was just kind of looking good. We were feeling good.
Well, here's something that really kind of I don't think either one of us would have predicted. All 1-6 teams last week, all like the 1-win teams last week, they all won. I never would have guessed that.
Easy. No, we actually guessed the opposite of that. I don't think we had a 1-6 team winning at all last week. So,
and I think that's kind of on my compass a little bit this week. With some of my picks, I'm feeling a little saucy about some of them.
Me as well.
So, shall we dive into this, good sir? I'm excited for this week.
I am excited for this week, but one last thing that's on my compass.
Okay.
Matt Stafford not playing against the Bears out of nowhere really on 2 fronts. One, where picks, we wanted that to be right, and we were feeling good about that game. They probably would have won with Matt Stafford. And 2, man, that Bears draft pick just got worse because of that, and I'm kind of upset. 3-6, maybe the Bears are kind of dead in the water a little bit, kind of giving up on the season. But, maybe they feel like they have a reason to fight, this week. So that disappoints me. But, Joseph, let's move on. Let's start with our Thursday night football prediction. Obviously, we're doing this after the game, but we, communicated and actually sent Joseph a text earlier in the morning saying urgent, just so he would call me and we would communicate who we were picking for tonight's game. And alas, we both decided to go with the Pittsburgh Steelers, who lost the game and, metaphorically lost the war as it comes in terms of fight. So, Joseph already starting off 0-1.
Yeah, not a good way to start. Not a good way to start the week. But I think we can bounce back from that this week. We got some easy matchups. We're gonna see some bold picks. I think on my half. I'm gonna try and get back. Gonna try and cut back on that deficit, that lead you have on me. And I think this first game, I don't think that'll do it for me because I think this one is a fairly easy one to pick. Well, actually, I shouldn't say that. I think it depends on a couple of things. We got the Dallas Cowboys, Mark, going down to Rock City to go take on the Detroit Lions, and. I have Matthew Stafford is practicing, and that's giving me faith, Mark, that he's going to play. And I'm going to take a shot with the Detroit Lions this week at home against the Cowboys. And this pick is all going to depend on whether or not Matthew Stafford plays. If he plays, I think they're going to beat the Cowboys. I don't like the way the Cowboys have played against good teams this year. They've beaten the Eagles, yes, but they've also lost a couple of games that I think they should have won. And when it comes down to this game, if Matthew Stafford is playing, I don't think Dak Prescott will be able to keep up with him if it turns into a shootout, which I think it has the potential to do. Zeke just doesn't look the same this year. He doesn't seem to have that same pop, that same speed that he did when he was younger. And I think that's going to force Dak to throw the ball a whole lot. And if Matthew Stafford is playing, I don't think Dak can keep up with them. So give me the Lions in this game.
You know, we have our first difference of opinion here. I'm actually taking the Dallas Cowboys on the road. And, it's hard because Matt Stafford's one of my absolute favorite quarterbacks I've ever, watched growing up. I just remember him and Megatron and stuff. I know he's going to come back and play and probably play well. But I think Dak Prescott showed me something last week against the Vikings. Yeah, I know they ultimately lost, but I don't think it was on him. He was actually playing really well, making great throws down the field, rolling out of the pocket, buying time. And I think we're going to continue to see that. Another reason I think the Cowboys are going to win here is I know that we both have kind of watched Ezekiel Elliott and seen he's not the same guy, but I know this Detroit run defense isn't good either. So I think they're going to be able to take advantage even without a, completely, young and spry Ezekiel Elliott. And I think Dak Prescott's going to make just enough plays to beat Detroit on the road. So give me the Cowboys in this one.
All right. And, Mark, if Matthew Stafford doesn't play, then I think I'm going to lose this one. I just want to put that out there that I'm confessing that my pick relies on Matthew Stafford. So, come on.
Yep. Jeff Driscoll ain't going to cut it.
Moving on, Mark, we got another kind of spicy matchup, another matchup that could depend on which quarterback plays. We have the Jacksonville Jaguars going down to take on the Indianapolis Colts. And I'll go ahead and start us off with this one, Mark. I am going to be picking the Jacksonville Jaguars in this one. Partly because Jacoby Brissett isn't a for sure go in this game, and I don't want to have two picks relying on two quarterbacks helping them playing. But part of that is because I really do like this Jacksonville team. I know Minshew Mania is over in Jacksonville. They're going with Nick Foles again, who I think is a really good quarterback. He always has been. I think they've built that team to fit his play style. Leonard Fournette is having easily the best year of his career this year, and they have a couple of pass rushers up on that front seven that I think can get after this Colts offensive line, because I know they do have one of the best offensive line units in football. But from what it sounds like, I just don't think Jacoby Brissett is that ready to play yet. So, if it's Brian Hoyer playing, I don't think he can beat the Jaguars. So give me the Jaguars.
Yeah, you and me both. I'm taking Jacksonville in this one. Minshew Mania, like you said, is over. Nick Foles is back. I think Nick Foles is going to inject a lot of life into this team, kind of like Gardner Minshew did when Nick Foles went down. I think you're going to have the same thing. I think these players are going to get up and get excited for their, franchise quarterback essentially to come back and play. And I also think coming off of a bye after that tough loss, they're going to, I think they're going to be ready to play and a little bit more healthy than Indianapolis, who, like you said, Jacoby Brissett isn't playing probably. And I don't trust Brian Hoyer. I thought he was an okay backup. It just looks like he's going to throw a bunch of picks. So because of that, I'm going to take Jacksonville on the road in this one as well.
All right. So we're on the same page there. And this one, Mark, I think I'm almost positive we're going to differ here. And I may sound crazy to some people, but we have the Buffalo Bills, Mark, going down to Miami to take on them Dolphins. And all I got to say, Mark, is Dolphins fan here.
Man.
I'm rolling with the Miami Dolphins. And I know that sounds crazy, and I know this is a very, very bold pick. But this is kind of the way I'm looking at this, Mark. I know that the Bills have a really good defense, and I acknowledge that. But they also really struggle to move the ball on offense. And the last time these two teams played, it was the Dolphins actually played really well that game up until the fourth quarter where they lost it. It was a 21-9 game for the Dolphins up until the fourth quarter. And then the Bills rattled off 22 points, but one of them was on a muffed, I think, onside kick by the Bills by the Dolphins to get the ball back. So the Dolphins have played this team really close, and I think they're going to remember that game and use that as even more fuel to fuel the fire that's already going. Coming off of 2 straight wins, they're playing hard right now. And Fitzmagic is going in Miami right now. So all of that is kind of leading me to pick the Dolphins this week. As crazy as that sounds, it's kind of a gut feeling I have. So I'm just going to roll with it this week, see what happens.
Well, yeah, we do differ here because I am taking the Buffalo Bills. I am not going to pick against this defense, against a putrid, I guess, offense in Miami, where Ryan Fitzpatrick thinks he's the second coming of Dan Marino, throwing the ball down the field without that arm strength. Also, number 63 is still out there in that scary defensive, front and all that. That's not going to be pretty. I do think it could be relatively close, especially being at home for Miami, but like the Dolphins are just clearly a better team, and I think they're better coached at this point. And this is going to be one of those patented, Ryan Fitzpatrick has played like 3-4 games or whatever, and he's looked pretty good. Well, I think the Fitzmagic kind of dies after that amount of time. So I expect Fitzmagic to throw some picks in this one, and give me Buffalo over the Miami Felipes. For all of those who don't know, Felipe is definitely a legend in his own right on NFL memes. Every time there's a post, all he does is he posts him in a muscle shirt with a duck face saying Dolphins fan here. And he's been immortalized by Facebook and the NFL community. So, you know what? Good for you for rolling with Felipe this week, Joseph.
Yeah, no, I know it sounds crazy, but I've missed on some picks the past few weeks, some kind of gut feelings that I had. So I'll roll with it this week. We'll see what happens.
So honestly, if the Dolphins win, should we reach out and try to get Felipe on our
podcast? Mark, you should. Why not? We'll get the legend on our podcast. We'll get him to talk about some Dolphins football with us.
I don't know if I can, honestly. I just take that back. I take it back. Anyways, let's move on. Joseph, to our next matchup, where I think we have a pretty good, likelihood that we can agree here. We have those Denver Broncos, the painful fan base, as I call it, going into Minnesota to take on those Skull Vikings, who come off a big win, beating Dallas in prime time. Joseph, I'll start us off. If it's not obvious, I'm taking the Minnesota Vikings here. Kirk Cousins is playing some of the best football of his career. He didn't play exceptionally great last week, but he played good against a really good Dolphins. Oh no, a really good Cowboys defense. Dalvin Cook is the man. He is just the man. He's such a stud. I love watching him play. He's explosive, and he's one of the most dynamic runners I've seen in a long time. And I think that's going to give this Denver defense trouble. And I don't see Brandon Allen consistently moving the ball on this well-coached Minnesota defense, even, though they've had their issues through the year. So give me the Minnesota Vikings at home.
Yeah, I mean, you were on the same page there, Mark. I really don't have much to add. Just if you were to compare these two rosters, top to bottom, Minnesota has, I think, the edge just about everywhere. I'm really struggling to think to a certain area where Denver has the edge up on a position. You could maybe argue pass rushers. Von Miller's out there for the Broncos still, but the Vikings are just overall a much more talented team. And that defense gets to go up against that awful Denver offensive line. So that's something I'm going to be watching out for. That's on my compass. Maybe number 63 of the Dolphins. He may be replaced, Mark, depending on how bad this line plays. So
wouldn't it be number 72, Garrett Bowles?
Oh, it could be. He's been kind of on my radar. That was, a boy coming from my school, University of Utah, but hasn't lived up to the hype. So Garrett Bowles, watch out. You may be on my compass.
Well, there we go. Compass pointing downwards, trending downwards for Garrett Bowles there. But anyways, let's move on. Joseph, our next game, we have the New Orleans Saints coming off a tough loss, a very shocking loss to the Atlanta Falcons, going into Tampa to take on the Jameis Winston, Bruce Arians high octane offense of the Buccaneers. Joseph, who do you have in this one?
I'm going to be going with the New Orleans Saints in this one. And part of me wanted to pick Tampa Bay because of that offense, but then I remembered that Jameis Winston was still the quarterback and that he's still going to throw interceptions. And this New Orleans defense is legit, Mark. They are very, very good. That front seven they have, I think, is one of the best in football. I think it's easily a top 5 front seven in the league. Cam Jordan just gets after quarterbacks back there. I think he's going to be in Jameis Winston's all face. I think they're going to force Jameis Winston into some really bad throws. And I just don't think this Tampa Bay defense can stop Drew Brees, Michael Thomas, and Alvin Kamara. So give me the Saints on the road.
Yes, I'm going to take the Saints on the road in a close game, really gritty game. That defense, I think the reason I pick New Orleans in a lot of games is just because that defense is legit, and that's why I think they're a Super Bowl contender, not because of that offense and all the players they have there. But I think New Orleans fans should be a little bit concerned about Drew Brees and his performance. He did not play particularly well against the Atlanta Falcons, and if he comes out and doesn't have a great game here against a pretty bad defense, I think there's some cause for concern 2 weeks in a row like that. So, give me New Orleans. They're overall a more talented team, but look, we could be seeing a little bit of a decline for Drew Brees over here if this trend continues.
Oh, we'll see if Drew Brees can get his compass to start pointing north instead of south. This could be our round. This could be our mark you down for a cup of Joe, kind of like our mutual compass. But we'll save that for the compass reading episode. I guess we could say. I don't know what you call the exact term for compassing. Anyway, Mark, let's move on to I think what's going to be kind of a lame matchup, is kind of mean as that may sound. But we got the New York Jets going down to take on the Washington Redskins. And I don't like this matchup, Mark. I hate having to pick between two really bad teams and who's going to win. You're basically trying to ask me which team is going to play worse, and that's really hard to do. But in this one, I think it's a little bit easier. I think the Washington Redskins are going to be the worst team in this one. So I'm going to be taking them Jets. They're going to be flying high this week. Sam Darnold, I know, has had a couple of rough, he had a rough 3-game stretch there for a while. I think he threw right around 8 interceptions. But he had a big game this past week. He bounced back. He looked good. And he showed some signs of, development a little bit. The team is back in there, rallying behind Adam Gase a little bit. I know there were lots of criticisms around him, but it seems like they're all rallying behind him right now. I think they're going to be playing hard this week to kind of prove to everybody that, Adam Gase deserves to be their coach. And I just don't think Washington is as talented as this one, especially at quarterback. Dwayne Haskins, I don't think he's looked bad so far in the couple of times in his first start, but he really didn't do anything to show me that he can beat an NFL team. So give me the Jets in this one.
Yeah, I kind of agree with your precedent over here where it's like, you're asking me which team's going to play worse. Well, in the Battle of Grease Fires, I think Washington's going to go up in flames first. So, they're going to do something first. Like, this is one of those teams that hasn't scored many points at all. Like, it's just been kind of putrid how many points they've scored. And I know the Jets have been the same way, but they've just played a little bit better as of late. So, I mean, with not a lot of confidence either, I'm picking the New York Jets in this one just because Sam Darnold. I mean, yeah, I don't know. That's kind of my reasoning. I don't really have a great reason. I don't feel good about this one, but the Jets on the road in this one, both in agreement here.
All right. So moving on, Mark, to another kind of spicy matchup, I think. We got an NFC South showdown between the Atlanta Falcons, them Dirty Birds, and the Carolina Panthers. And Mark, I may seem a little crazy again right here, but I'm going to be picking the Atlanta Falcons in this game. I know they just came in, and this may be riding high off their victory, but so be it. They really impressed me with the way they played last week against the Saints, both offensively and defensively. Mainly defensively, because that's been the big thing that's been lacking for them all year. And they came in there and surprised everybody with 6 sacks against this Saints team. They got to Drew Brees 6 times. And going up against this Panthers team, I think they can still rush the passer a little bit. They still have talent on that defense. I think it's just been underperforming. I think they can go after Kyle Allen and get some pressure on him, force him into some bad throws, maybe a couple of strip sacks. But I think the big thing, too, another big thing that's pushing me towards the Falcons is they still have Matt Ryan at quarterback, who I know hasn't been playing, anywhere near what he's been. I shouldn't say anywhere near. He hasn't been having as big of a year as he's had before, but he's still good. He's still a legit He's still a legit starting quarterback. So all that's kind of pushing me towards the Falcons this week. Give me them on the road.
Yeah, I think them Dirty Birds are going to continue to live in sin for another week. They're not going to get cleansed by the Panthers this week. I think just kind of this whole thing is going to be a battle of momentum, and Atlanta's coming in with a lot more momentum, beating a very, I think a Super Bowl team in New Orleans. Like, I think they are going to the Super Bowl, and they were able to dominate that team. I think they're kind of riding high off of that, and then they're going to go into Carolina against a lesser division opponent. So just based off of that, I'm going to give Atlanta the win in a close one. I think Carolina will keep it close with that run game. Christian McCaffrey, keep Matt Ryan off the field a little bit. But, yeah, you and I both, Atlanta.
Ooh. Interesting. I thought we'd be differing there. But Julie, excuse me, sorry, Mark. My sister just had a text, and her name was I just saw the little notification pop up, and her name popped into my mind. Excuse me, Mark. This next matchup, I think, is a very, very, very good matchup. I think probably the best one of the week, and maybe the most important one of the week if you start thinking about playoff-wise. We have the Houston Texans going down to take on the Baltimore Ravens. And I'll let you start this one off, Mark, because I know you're such a big you really like these two teams and their quarterbacks. I'll let you get going for us.
Yes. Well, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm not a big fan of Baltimore's quarterback because they don't even play him that much. I mean, I'm a fan of Baltimore's 2 starting running backs they have out there. But in this one, I am actually taking the 2 running backs. I'm taking Lamar Jackson and Mark Ingram to beat the Houston Texans at home. Really what this game comes down to for me is Baltimore's ability to run the ball. And I know Houston hasn't been that great at stopping the run this year. They've been kind of bad at it, actually. And that's just going to be a big weakness for Houston. And I think a lot of times with these matchups, whenever there's a great quarterback, if the opposite team can run the ball and keep the quarterback off the field, they're probably going to win the game. And this is how I see that game going. I see Baltimore at home being able to control the line of scrimmage, control the clock, and really limit what Deshaun Watson can do, making plays. I think they're both great players, but just that running game being more consistent is the decisive factor for me. So I'm taking those Ravens at home.
All right. Me and you both, Mark. And I don't really have much to add to what you said. I'll just kind of leave it at that. This is just kind of the last little thing I'll kind of throw in there. I just don't want to pick against the Ravens right now. I know we maybe kind of doubted them towards the beginning of the season when they had a couple of they lost a few games in a row, but they look really, really good right now. They look like legit contenders right now with the way they're playing, coming off a win against the New England Patriots. And I just don't feel comfortable picking it against them right now. So give me them at home.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. Beating the one benchmark team I always pick for every game definitely raised my eyebrows, and that's part of it too. So Anyways, let's move on to our next matchup. Joseph, we have another rematch from a couple weeks ago, Thursday Night Football on Halloween, I believe. We have the Arizona Cardinals, instead of being at home, going into San Francisco to take on those 49ers, who come off a tough loss from the Seattle Seahawks. But Joseph, I'm going to go ahead and get us started with this one. I'm taking the San Francisco 49ers. They came off of a loss. I think they're going to be upset. I know it's a short week, but they're going to be motivated to go out there and beat the Cardinals now. The Cardinals were able to keep it close at home, but just the Niners being at home with that crowd and that pass rush is going to make it a lot harder for Kyler Murray, a bigger challenge, and I think he'll still play well, but I don't think he's going to be able to do what he did, at home with his Cardinals team. So just based off of that, give me San Francisco.
Yep. Me and you are on the same page, Mark. I think that front seven is just going to make things really hard for Arizona to run the ball, make it really hard for Kyler Murray to, sit back and make some throws in the pocket. And I don't think he's going to be able to do much outside the pocket with that defense. So I really don't have much to add. Give me the Niners in this one. I just think that they're just a much more talented team, in my opinion.
Okay.
And speaking of more talented teams, Mark, this next matchup, oh my, lopsided talent. One team, oh my goodness. We have 0-8 Cincinnati Bengals.
0-9, excuse me.
Oakland. 0-9, excuse me. Going down to take on them Raiders. And it's just this simple for me, Mark. We could go and just talk about how well the Raiders have been playing, how Derek Carr has looked, how Josh Jacobs has looked. But it's really just this simple for me for this one. The Bengals are just that bad. They're in complete and total tank mode right now. I thought the Dolphins were in tank mode. Look at the Cincinnati Bengals. They've benched their starting quarterback, Andy Dalton, for the rest of this season. And I think part of that is just because they don't want him getting hurt, so they can trade him at the end of the year so they can go draft another guy. This is just such a talent-deprived roster. They don't trust their quarterback right now. This rookie, they ran the ball 30 times last week with Joe Mixon, and with that offensive line, I don't think they can do it this week again. Well, they really didn't have much success last week. Just all in all, this is just a bad football team, and I don't like picking bad football teams against good football teams. So give me the Raiders.
Joseph, can I get a patented Raiders chant? We'll do it together. Ready? Raiders! Are you kidding me? I'm not picking against my freaking team, who have looked really good the past month. Even against the Packers, they had their moments that got away from them. Houston Texans lost by 3. Couple drops could have changed that game. Beat the Detroit Lions at home with Matt Stafford, who was red hot, and were able to beat the Chargers at home, a good Chargers team who kind of looked like they were turning the corner, by playing great defense. And Joseph, the one thing about this Raiders team is that every week they're kind of proving to me that they can win in different ways. And, against the Lions, it was their offense, and against the Chargers, it was their defense showing up to play. I think that's the mark of a good team, being able to win multiple ways. And I think this Raiders team might be turning the corner, and they're going to kick the crap out of these Bengals. And, I don't want to say it because I know John Gruden over here likes to run conservative offense, but I'm thinking a 40 burger. Like, I think it's going to be that dominant of a win because the Bengals are like the worst rush defense in the NFL. They also have one of the worst pass defenses, and the Raiders team's just going to push them around. Josh Jacobs is going to have a huge game. I think Derek Carr is going to have a huge game too. And that defense will continue to improve against this bad offense. So give me the Oakland Raiders at home. Only half a game back from Kansas City, so let's see what they can do here.
This could, a win for Oakland and a loss for Kansas City would make that AFC West very, very interesting.
Joseph, before you go, this is poetic justice because, the Raiders have been so bad for so long. But, the one thing I will always fall back on, the autumn wind It ain't no Charger. It ain't no Steeler. No Patriot. And you're dang sure it ain't a Chief. It is a Raider. And I think this is going to be their coming out party for a playoff push. They're going to show why they are the autumn wind over the next few weeks.
All right, so we'll follow this Oakland playoff potential run these next few weeks. Moving on, Mark, to a matchup where, I think they've already pretty much guaranteed themselves a playoff spot and a first week bye. We have the New England Patriots going down to the city of brotherly love, where they probably won't get much love from these Eagles and their fan base. Mark, we got a Super Bowl rematch right here.
Ooh,
and
I'll see.
Nick Foles ain't there to beat Tom Brady. There's only a couple of quarterbacks that seem like they can beat Tom Brady. He's one of them. He ain't there anymore. So I'm going to be taking the New England Patriots in this one. I know we've talked about this before, but that defense is just so good. They're legit. They're, I think, one of the most dominant defenses that we've seen over the past few years. And that Eagles team is really struggling to find any rhythm on offense. 1 week they can throw the ball, the next week they're running the ball, but they can't really seem to put together all 1 week. And I just don't trust them to beat a team like the New England Patriots. Even though they're at home, even though they're going to have the home crowd with them, I just don't see them being able to beat this Patriots team. I don't see them being able to put together enough consistent drives and get enough offensive momentum to slow down Tom Brady and their offense. So give me the Patriots.
Yes. Joseph, that really bad loss to the Ravens on Sunday night. Well, first of all, I think it's just kind of one of those things where they haven't really played Lamar Jackson before, so let's see how they do the second time around. I don't think Lamar in that offense is going to have the same game. Bill Belichick won't let that happen again. But I want to see a pissed off Patriots team, pissed off Bill Belichick just taking out all their rage on Philadelphia after a bye. I mean, Bill Belichick is one of those guys who never loses on a bye, and he's pissed. That whole team's pissed probably from being embarrassed on national television. People, taking jabs at Tom Brady, Bill Belichick, that entire team. They're going to come ready to play. They're going to kick the snot out of these Eagles who don't have an identity on offense. And I think if you want to beat the Patriots, you have to have an identity. I just don't think Philadelphia has one. So give me the Patriots on the road in this one.
All right. We're on the same page there. I think that one should be a, how do I want to say this? The word is slipping my mind right now.
Is it a lock? Is it a lock?
I won't lock it up. I won't say that it's a for sure because Philadelphia still is a talented team, so I still think there's some potential for an upset. But this next matchup, Mark, we'll just move on right along because whatever I was trying to say just left my mind. Moving right along to our Sunday night matchup. This one, I think this is going to be an ugly game. We got the Chicago Bears. We got the Bears going down to take on the Rams down in Los Angeles. And, Mark, this one was a tough one for me to choose again. This is another one where it's just who's going to play worse in this one. And I think the Chicago Bears are going to play worse in this one. I really do. I just don't trust Mitchell Trubisky in that offense to move the ball consistently. I know we've talked about this before, but week in and week out, he just proves my point that he can't sustain offensive drives. That defense just hasn't played anywhere near to its potential. And I know Los Angeles has had its fair share of offensive troubles this year, but that defense is still legit. Their pass rush is still really good, and they have Jalen Ramsey back there shutting down teams' best receiving weapons. So I think that defense, I think this is going to be a defensive battle, and I like the Rams defense a little bit better. So I'll take the Rams in this one.
I don't think you're crazy to say you like the Rams defense better. I think they are better than the Bears defense this year, even with Khalil Mack with his, 5.5 sacks, which is less than Benson Mayo of the Raiders. But I'm gonna leave that jab out of it for now, even though it's totally in there now. It's kind of one of those things where I don't trust Mitchell Trubisky, and you know what? The Bears should change the name from the Chicago Bears to the Chicago Lucky, because they got really lucky that Matt Stafford inexplicably missed last week's game. They only won by 6-7 points to backup quarterback Jeff Driscoll. Who? The guy that the Bengals let go for Ryan Finley, basically, in his second year. Yeah, just because of that, I trust this Rams team a little bit more. They're going to be at home, and I think that's a big deal. And Mitchell Trubisky is going to play worse than Jared Goff, as crazy as that sounds. So give me the Rams in this one.
All right. We're both on the same page there. It's always nice when we're both united against the Bears.
Yes,
I think we could do,
absolutely.
I think there's a lot more we could say against the Bears, but I think we'll save that for our bear pelting podcast.
Whoa, that's spicy.
Moving on to a team that actually has the potential to pelt someone. We got them Chiefs, those Indians with their tomahawks going down to LA for a quote unquote road game to take on their division rivals, the Los Angeles Chargers. And I think this could be I think on paper it doesn't look as good as this game I think is going to be, just because the Chargers have played kind of inconsistent all year. But I really like this matchup. I really like this matchup for the Chargers, and they're who I'm going to be picking in this one. As crazy as that may sound to some of our listeners, especially with the way Patrick Mahomes looked in his first game back from injury. But I just think of that Green Bay game where they were able to get after Aaron Rodgers and really rush the passer and really disrupt that Packers offense. And I think they have the talent to do that against the Kansas City Chiefs, who are a bit banged up on the offensive line. And even when they're healthy, I think have kind of a so-so mediocre offensive line. It's not that great. And I think Joey Bosa and Melvin Ingram are just going to go after and really make Patrick Mahomes' life hard in those passing situations, because we both know they're going to be throwing the ball a whole lot. I think I think that's all. I think that's ultimately what's pushing me to pick the Chargers in this one, Mark. I just like their defense a little bit better going up against this Chiefs offense, so I'm taking the Chargers.
Joseph, these Native Americans are going to learn the power of electricity, because it's way past their time, because those Chargers are going to come in and stun those Kansas City Chiefs on Monday Night Football. And I agree with everything you said on the defense. I'm not going to add anything there. I'm going to flip to the Chargers offense and that Chiefs defense as the reason why they're going to win, because that Chiefs defense is coming fresh off of a performance where Derrick Henry ran wild on them for, I think, 170 and 2 touchdowns, something insane like that. And if you watch, Melvin Gordon's actually been playing really well the past couple of weeks against your Packers, my Raiders. He had great games against both of those guys. And that's Chiefs' biggest weakness is to give up a lot of rushing yards and a lot of stuff in the run. And, that's going to lead to, I've noticed Kansas City likes to play a lot of man defense. And I think those playmakers on the Chargers are going to make a lot of plays to get open for Phillip Rivers. So he's not really throwing into tight windows as much, so they're going to kind of sell out to stop the run, I would imagine. And Phillip Rivers is going to have his opportunities to take his shots down the field. So because of that, and in combination with their defense, I think the Chargers come out with the win. And, the implications here that the Raiders, the good old Raiders, I think will be in first place if the Chiefs lose and they win. So, look for that one, fans of the podcast.
All right, we're on the same page yet again, Mark. This has turned into, it's just interesting. It always kind of interests me that week in and week out we're both super similar with the teams that we're picking and our matchups and just kind of our thoughts, hopefully
I will say, go for it. Sorry.
I was just gonna say, hopefully some of those kind of crazier picks, I guess I can say, go through for me. So, so I catch up a couple of games in our race for in this matchup that we have in our pick'ems.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Joseph, here's what I'm going to say. I know you say we have a similar football mind, but I think we think of football the right way because our records seem to speak for themselves, being, comfortably positive through 10 weeks of NFL action, excluding week 1 as well. So really 9 weeks, and just having 78 wins for me and 71 for you. I think we're both on pace to hit 110, I think, this year. So, that would be a really big accomplishment to hit 110 games guessed correctly for this NFL season. So you say it's similar thinking, but I say great minds think alike.
Yeah, I think it'd be saucy. 110 wins for each of us. Let's make it happen, Mark.
Let's do it. Let's pick these games right. But anyways, feeling good about these pick'ems. I know we've had some brutal weeks, but I think it's going to rebound. I think we're due for a good week. But anyways, thank you guys so much for listening to the podcast. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe just for new podcasts, new updates, and all that. And, we'll be here for you guys. So anyways, this has been Mark.
This has been Joe.
You guys have a good evening. Thanks for listening to the Mark You Down for a Cup of Joe podcast.